Hi, everyone. So today we are going to try something a little bit different. Actually, we did a podcast recording where we kind of recorded it webinar style. We opened up the articles, we kind of walked through them with you, and it was really, really, really popular. And so we are going to look at bringing that back again. And so this week, we're actually going to continue. I feel like jobs, careers, AI has just been in the news nonstop. And every single week, sort of like there's new data, there's new stories and trends that are emerging. So we're going to keep this theme going, especially because we know for many students, it's going to be college application time. It's a time where, many of them are thinking about SATs, colleges, all these different kinds of things. And I think it's really important to just start putting on their radar what is the workforce looking for, especially since many of them are planning a few years out. And so this really brings us sort of to this concept that I really feel like we are asking the wrong questions about AI and jobs. We kind of think of it in terms of a very binary perspective. It is not really simply, will AI take my job? It's this yes or no framing, almost in many ways, like misses the point. It's more like, what kind of jobs are going to exist in the future? Who is going to have access to these jobs? And what are those skills going to be? Do I have the skills, and not just to design new jobs or even just be able to participate in those new jobs, but also redesign the existing ones and really lead that initiative? And, I know for many people, like the AI, I feel like this is in the news as if it's some new thing. But I always go back to, I think one of the reasons we're struggling with this so much is that this has been very, very, very small shifts over time. I always talk about myself in 2007, how I experienced this. I mean, I feel like my whole career is built on like linchpin and this idea of like be that person who can find the challenges and solve them. And that's really why that design thinking lens is so, so, so important. So again, just kind of like our episode today is really this idea that jobs is not a binary shift. It's not some people are going to get them, some people are not, but it is a very messy gray zone where things are moving, where tasks are being reimagined, new jobs are being created, and many are also disappearing as well. And so we know historically that when this happens, there is definitely always a time of discomfort where not everyone really kind of manages to make it through. And so our role as school leaders and organizations and employers is to look at how do we support this next generation in being as successful and people who are also existing in the workplace as well.
How do you navigate change? It's a question we think about often, and one that today's world expects us to be comfortable with. The challenge, however, is where do you begin? And how do you develop the mindset and skills to be successful? You're listening to Designing Schools, and I'm your host, Dr. Sabba Quidwai, educator, researcher, and storyteller. Join me each week for stories and strategies that bridge the gap between research and practice, as together we explore how might we design schools.
This topic about jobs reminds me of that quote from William Gibson: the future is here, it just isn't evenly distributed. And so it seems with AI, everybody thinks this is new, but I feel this has been happening for a long time. And so this is an exciting paper that kind of adds to, I guess, to the commentary.
Yeah, I mean, look, to your point about how it's kind of always been there. I mean, AI's been around for a while, but also automation. We've seen automation in other things. Some factory work already been automated. We see when you go through the toll booth now, there's usually not somebody collecting the toll. So we've seen, so in this new paper, Canaries in the Coal Mine, 6 facts about recent employment effects of artificial intelligence. They're really looking at AI and really generative AI specifically. It's authored by Eric Brynjolfsson and these two other authors. Eric's at Stanford High Center. So he's one of the leading people in economics and AI, especially the impact on the labor markets. And what they're generally trying to do is look at, okay, well, what are the jobs that are exposed to AI and what kind of trends do we see in those jobs? It draws kind of basically 6 conclusions. The one thing they note is that the hardest group hit so far is younger workers. You take younger workers, especially in the most highly exposed occupations, such as computer science and kind of some low level management type stuff. And what you see is a large decline. And if you look at the charts and graphs and the study, you'll see that into 2023 and through June 2025, they really start to fall off. Now, that being said, overall employment is still growing. People in kind of the 30 to 40-year-old kind of ages, they're still doing pretty well. And some people say, well, it makes some sense because those are generally at least kind of a little bit higher level of a management job that involves some discretion and in thinking through things. You see overall growth. And they say one of the key differences is, well, can AI automate your job or can it enhance or augment your job. And obviously, with a lot of entry level work, there's a lot of summarization, basic research type stuff. A lot of that stuff can obviously be automated. Whereas when people are making judgments in a little higher level of a management position or doing something more complicated, AI is enhancing those roles. Okay. Now, obviously, the ultimate question becomes, well, okay, does AI get to that level as well? These are some of the things. And the pattern they say holds up no matter how you slice the data. There's no industry where it's untouched. If this is an entry level position and it can be done by AI, we're seeing that it happens. Let's kind of just briefly talk through each of the six findings. The first is that employment for young workers has declined in AI exposed jobs. So, regardless of, we could probably debate about the causation, I'm sure people will, but we do see a clear decline in employment for young workers, recent college graduates in jobs like computer science and kind of low level management, research, information processing type jobs, stuff that AI can do pretty well or as well, or maybe even better than a human. So, where it can be automated, those people are being replaced.
Yeah, and I think what was really interesting was software development and coding were definitely mentioned by them as an area that was being impacted. They did say that employment for software developers aged 22 to 25 declined by nearly 20% compared to its peak in 2022. And I was reading this other article in Vox where there was a kid who was like, when I was 13, I remember reading about how the world was going to be changing and how everybody thought you should go into coding. And so I went and I did coding and now I graduated and I don't have a job. And so I just wanted to say to these ones, I think that's sometimes what happens when we lock people into, well, this is going to be the job of the future. Some of those more durable skills, obviously, I'm going to take it back to like design thinking. You could, even within software development, there's no way you can say like there's no more jobs. Obviously, there are, but like, can you design for what exists? Can you see a challenge? And then also, do you know how to position yourself for that particular thing? I think that's a very complementary set of skills compared to, oh, I'm just going to learn how to code and I'm just going to go to coding camp and things along those lines. So,
Right, right.
like, or that's a hard place to be.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense. It's especially true in coding because there are obviously other kind of entry level jobs too that they can be replaced, and some of those are being replaced. But it's the computer companies, so to speak. They're going to know how to use this technology the best. It makes sense that the first thing to be replaced is coders, and that's where we've seen some of the most. What are these companies really trying to do? They're really trying to create automated coding, and there's an incentive for them to do it because they can also use it to advance their own products, but they're also making a lot of money kind of selling these tools. But like you say, we also see drop off marketing and sales managers. That blue line is exposed, and you can see how big of a drop that is. And my guess is if you break that down, a lot of it's kind of on the marketing side. I've seen so many applications that people are selling where they'll automate a large portion of your marketing. That's not surprising at all. Where we're seeing these declines, if you follow the technology and really what it's best at currently, there is a very strong correlation.
Yeah. The healthcare one I thought was interesting that was going up because those are like sometimes a lot of CTE classes,
Yeah.
like health aides, nursing aides, things like that. Anything basically that was sort of human type work, they
Right,
definitely
right.
saw a little bit of an uptick kind of in that one. All right. So there's obviously a lot in this paper and whatnot, but let's go to our second one.
Yeah, the second, they're saying that overall employment is continuing to grow in the economy because some people say, well, when the unemployment numbers, so to speak, come out, that are just very broad. They say, okay, well, there really hasn't been much of a downturn, or maybe some. There's a lot of instability in the economy right now, right, for various factors. It can be explained by that, but we'll have to look at, okay, what kind of jobs are people getting? They're not getting these computer science jobs that they went and they got a degree for. What kind of jobs are people getting? And we'll talk about this more in the age range. It's really the people that are mid-career. There's jobs that are being protected, which makes sense because those are like at least somewhat higher managerial roles, and those do require more judgment. We're seeing there that there's kind of more augmentation. Like those people can be using AI too, but maybe they're using it to make better judgment, just using it kind of for their day-to-day tasks. But their jobs involve a lot more than day-to-day tasks. They're not just showing up at work and somebody's just giving them a pile of day-to-day tasks to do that can be done by the AI.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think it's sad though. Again, like we are seeing, like I think this one for each age group, employment growth from late 2022 to 2025 was 6 to 13% for the lowest three AI exposure things with no employment ordering sort of like growth by age.
Yeah.
But the ones I mean, there was again, a huge drop off again for early career, and I just think that, like I think when we are looking at these days at the conversation in schools, I don't know, what are some of the things you're seeing? Because I feel like people are not making a strong connection between how much the job market is changing and the skills that kids really need, and I think it's, like, particularly sad because whereas before being able to like redesign things and whatnot was very much something people had to do. The fact that we now have the support of these AI tools, okay, well, let's integrate more design thinking. Let's build a new entrepreneurship class. Like you were just talking about that college pipeline. Like I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to actually solve for this, not having to wait years and years and years.
Yeah, I mean, I think kids are definitely nervous. I'm teaching a college class, it was like an intro to AI class, and I asked some of the students, "Oh, just like what's on your mind? What are you thinking about AI?" And both the students who volunteered, one was marketing major, and the other wanted to be a therapist, and they're both very concerned that kind of AI would replace the jobs they were going to school for. But to kind of reinforce what I just said and what you were saying, they're kind of going to school to get this particular job. And they weren't really thinking, oh, well, yeah, but I've learned some other things. So I can do something else or I can adapt. I've learned a lot about psychology and maybe I won't be a therapist, but maybe I'll do something else. Or like you say, that like, okay, how can I use this to solve a problem? I've been thinking about it more because I've obviously been doing a lot of work in this area, but all just stuff like I'm pulling in knowledge from all different kinds of things that I've learned. Even kind of look back, be like, oh, I wish I had remembered that from undergrad or paid a little more attention at the time, right? Because I found myself drawing on multiple sources of information, but a lot of people, college majors are very narrow, especially like when you get into business school. They may just train you to be an accountant. And most of your classes are going to be about being an accountant. It's very narrow funnel. And so that's a job that's clearly going to be automated. So it's kind of a little tricky. I think universities need to start thinking outside the box and kind of stop spending so much time just talking about whether or how much of a paper can be written by AI.
Yeah, and I think it's not even universities, I think it's really high schools. I
Yeah.
think high schools really have to evolve because if you don't get those skills, I think when you're in high school, I feel like you don't really know. I always go back to I think with college, first of all, I think it's just really expensive, so that creates, like, a problem for
Right, right.
but if you don't know how to actually leverage the college experience yourself because I don't think higher education is gonna do it for you at all. That's kind of I mean, just being there right now, I don't think and even when I was a student, if I think back to, like, 2017, so again, that's, like, almost a little under a decade ago, right? I mean, nobody was in there in my doctoral program where, like, you don't have even the same restrictions as, like, standards or anything like this. In my doctoral program, there was nobody who was like, "Hey, you might wanna think about doing something different than just a paper," because today, people don't
Right.
just sit around and read research papers all day long when you wanna try to start things or launch your career, unless you wanna go a very specific trap of, like, being a professor or doing something very traditional. But there wasn't a lot in there about, like, "Hey, maybe you should start a podcast," or, "Hey, maybe you should, like, look at, like, doing other forms of work and whatnot." Like, if I didn't know how to leverage that, if I hadn't been at Apple, if I hadn't had the years in a K-12 setting where we were going one-to-one and I saw what was possible with technology, it wouldn't even have been on my radar. I mean, I had peers in my classes who had never used, like, Notability. They had never everyone just on a laptop typing away the traditional, way of just substitution of notes. And I was like I remember, like, showing people, like, "Oh, you can use Notability and you can do this and that." And people are like, "Whoa, like, we had no idea." I feel like if high school because we do have such an emphasis on so many one-to-one programs, really kind of took the lead in some of this. I think people might even be able college doesn't have to be something I go to. I feel like a lot of workplaces are really looking for like these really innovative design thinking graduates and whatnot. And so I think it just creates more opportunity for people to not have to go to college, not have to wait those years. Or when you do decide to go to college, then hopefully it's more structured. You know what it is that you're looking for. Well,
Yeah, and there's only I think nationwide in the US, only about 50% of students go to college and all of them don't graduate.
less.
Now, somebody was telling me the other day in Missouri, it's 30%. So we have to find a way to kind of educate people and prepare people who are not going to college. And to your point too, it's you're developing those skills and attitudes in college, and there's greater ways to make an impact. I remember listening to a podcast with Reid Hoffman. He's well, I thought about being a professor, but then I realized that if I wrote an article, 10 people would read it, and I wanted to have a bigger impact on the world. Now, obviously, if you're like a famous professor or something, then Eric Ben Jolson, you have a much bigger impact. Most people are not kind of in that category. So we're finding a lot of these other things are having an impact. And this next finding, we kind of talked about a little bit, but it's where they're finding is that it really declined where things are automated. It's not declining where things are augmenting. Because some people did fear that the augmentation would lead to a decline originally because it was, well, if you have 10 people kind of doing the same thing, but it's augmenting everybody, maybe they can replace at least a couple of those people. I mean, that could be happening incidentally, but we're not seeing that. We're seeing people who are using it to augment themselves. They're just kind of doing better work. That's how I feel about myself, though I'm a little biased, right? If I feel like I'm doing better work, I mean, I think you feel the same way, right? I mean, don't you feel that? Yeah. Right.
Absolutely. I will say, I know about, like, all my little random accidents I had lately, so my
Yeah.
third Tesla, hopefully third time's a charm. But my third Tesla, I did full self-driving. It was my first time doing full self-driving. I had actually done it once before. I was just like playing with the feature because you get a trial for full self-driving when you get
No, okay.
last year, yeah, a little over a year ago when I got my very first Tesla, I did the trial and I was more interested in like taking a video of what was happening. And so it was just on the side street. I was like on a real road, but it got really mad at me and it blocked me right away. As soon as I took my phone,
Oh, okay.
I think I did 3 strikes and I was like out, but it was very fast and it was very aggressive. This time, however, I noticed even if my phone is in my hand, it has to be in my hand for about 3 to 4 minutes before it prompts a warning. And what
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna put this out here in case anybody knows or knows somebody who could do this. I feel like full self-driving is the closest research you could do to impact on the brain that isn't just like our
Right.
I say I feel like a lot of these things that are coming out, like, that MIT study that was like,
Yeah, right, right.
the impact on the brain. That was, in my opinion, I think there's a better way to do that. I think one of the ways is full self-driving and looking at does it erode people's driving habits? Yes or no? It's the closest you can get, I think, because but I think it goes to this automation and augmentation a little bit because as I'm doing it, there is a part of me, and it's a very conscious decision you have to make as an individual. You have to choose to want to preserve that element of your thinking because I will tell you, there are times where I can zone off and the car just drives. And then I have to like, I'm like, oh my God, wait a minute. What is it
Right,
doing?
right, right,
It's
right, right.
not long, but it definitely can happen because I'm like eating something or I'm like doing something and or I'm just on the phone talking to somebody and the car is just driving, it's off on its own and it's great. Full self-driving, if you have never experienced full self-driving, it is
That's
absolutely
awesome.
worth going and just trying. But the other thing that it made me realize is when I am really present, I'm constantly evaluating. Now I'm overanalyzing every movement. I'm like, "Oh my God,
I see, right.
like, why did you take this
So, yeah, if you were just driving, you'd just be cruising along, maybe talking on the phone too, right? You wouldn't be actively engaged with
So
every
when I am actively engaged, I think my presence, my decision making, I'm constantly, "Oh my God, wait, why did you do that?" And sometimes I'll even take it back. I'm like, "Oh, no, I would stop sooner," or like, "No, why are we turning there? Why are we doing this?" So
Right, right, right.
it's interesting that when you go to pick up the car now, there's one really big change they've made, I think, to move people towards self-driving. And this to me was like a little bit of like, it's a little bit of a tangent here, but it's a little bit of a lesson in change management, was there are now Tesla volunteers who basically like give you like an overview when you go and you pick up your car. So they're separate than the actual Tesla advisor. And this guy was giving me tips on, the car now, they took away the drive and reverse handle. Okay. And if you only use the screen to go, like, so they put drive and reverse on the screen. So if you only use the screen, what happens is your whole orientation of driving just, it's too disrupted, that mental model. But I didn't realize the car actually does it itself to where you actually don't need to do drive and reverse anymore. So, for example, when you're reversing out of somewhere, it says tap the brake to reverse. So you tap your brake, it starts reversing. And the moment you start turning your wheel, it's got a pop up. Turn your wheel and automatically goes into drive and off you go. And I was
Oh,
going,
wow.
I guess now I don't even need to reverse and drive anymore as a handle. So there are little things along the way that I think are going to move people even more to full self driving. But again, I just went back to like, if I wanted to go and automate an essay or any assignment or anything, yeah, sure, I could have AI go do the work and just have it go in. But I actually have to make a very conscious choice to be present, to be engaged, and really that decision making who's doing what? How much agency do I want to have? Because with the car, the fact that it doesn't get as mad at you anymore, it makes you wonder like, as the car gets more agency, is it going to be okay with you not being as present? And now you're going to have to be even more conscious of being present because the car isn't even going to ask you to anymore.
Wonder when we went from horses to cars if people thought about all these things.
Yeah.
It's always different to be, riding a horse and telling it where to go all the time.
But I
Mm.
feel like Tesla would have the data because
Yeah, yeah, they've got it. I'm sure they have it.
so much data, because even when people I feel like they should go through and, like, ask people, "Hey, if you're a full self-driver, but you don't always use it, and then you compared the driving, you would get a really, really." Because okay, I was with my friend, and he got 3 strikes, and I kid you not, like 4 missed turns, like, just these different now granted, we were talking and this and that, and he's like, "Oh, well, I'm just
Yeah,
joking, we're talking and this and that," and I was like, "Really, though?" Like, I don't know, like, so I think full self-driving is the closest we can get to really doing a great study on how much it's really eroding our skills. Alright, anyways, let's go ahead and go to the next one. I do wanna say, though, this is really important. I think this is something that Eric Brynjolfsson in particular has advocated for since, like, I don't know, ever since I started following him in 2014, so he's been
right, right.
get this idea. We cannot automate work. We must augment work. And when we do augment it, we really do see people at an advantage. So again, huge opportunity for schools.
Well, and I think it starts not just at work. I think when you, even what you're talking about, like earlier, right? How you approach things in schools. If you do go to college, how you're approaching it there, how you're kind of approaching your workflows in your own life, right? It is kind of like, and part of that rhetoric seems people are, oh, well, these companies have to figure out like how to use it to augment people. Well, that's not how it's going to happen, right? I mean, obviously, if somebody figures out, hey, we could take all our people and augment them and then we're going to make all this additional money, they may choose to do that. But that's, it's not just going to happen that way because they feel compelled. For the last even 30 years, even before AI, you could kind of see some wage declines and unemployment from automation. So that's kind of how society is approaching things. So I think it kind of goes like you shouldn't just hope society or CEOs decide to use AI to augment you. You've got to use AI to like augment yourself. When you get a job, you don't just say, well, hey, you don't just go apply for a job at IBM and be like, well, I'm here. Tell me how to do the job and like train me and make sure I do a really good job. You come in prepared to do that work, prepared with those skills, right? Whether it's content, skills, personality, like some combination of all these things. You bring yourself to work in that environment and you have to take some responsibility. And I think as educators and people who are leaders in education, they need to start thinking that way themselves. Otherwise, they're kind of just sending kids into a chainsaw.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so this next one, employment declines for young AI exposed workers remain after conditioning on first time shocks.
Yeah, so it's just basically saying when you account for some other variables, that can help get it like causation a little bit more, right? Like it's trying to kind of exclude like other factors. You still see the declines.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And like I said, they've got a lot of graphs, a lot of really great kind of things in here. I think the other thing they looked for, obviously, they're working with ADP, but they said that labor market adjustments are visible in employment more than compensation. So basically, like salaries, like were not as affected.
Yeah, yeah. So I was just saying that those people, and I mean, if you think about what we're talking about, right? Like the people and the jobs that were like augmented, and the people whose jobs require judgment, all those types of things, and little higher level management. Yeah, they're not like cutting people back or using those to replace part of what they do, right? And this last one is just kind of saying the timelines line up, and with some of the other controversies we're seeing. I mean, obviously this paper, I mean, to kind of understand all the details, that you need like some background and economics, but you don't need that to understand the general point that the paper is making. And there's obviously been a lot of news articles about this paper that you can read. And there have been anecdotal stories before this that were saying, hey, entry level worker or recent college graduates were having trouble finding a job. And I even read an article recently in the Business Insider. They found some like presentation deck from PwC. We can share it in the show notes so we make sure you get it exactly correct, but they were basically saying they're going to reduce like entry level hiring by a third over the next 2 to 3 years. And the people they did to now put a positive thing on it. I mean, it's still going to be a net decline in jobs, right? But they're saying that the people that they do hire, they expect to come in with some type of ability to manage, right? Not necessarily management experience, because obviously they prefer that, but they know younger workers aren't going to have that. But like when you talk about your AI employees, your AI partners, some ability to manage and use AI in those types of situations, those are the people who are going to be hired. They didn't say like, oh, because the economy's bad or anything like that. They said because AI can do a lot of these things. People are kind of getting more public about it. Sometimes I think they just wish they wouldn't have come right out and said it. But that's where I think colleges and universities are, they're starting to wake up a little bit. A friend of mine told me this weekend, he's like, I think more colleges and universities are starting to see this as like existential. A lot of what they're preparing people for, and to your earlier point, the way they're preparing them is going to leave kids at like kind of an economic dead end.
They add that here. They talk about, like, what are some other basically in this one, it's like, what are some other factors that might be influencing this? Or, like,
Yeah.
what are some key things that I know one of the things that, again, Eric Brunelson's been really vocal about is how education must change to really
Right.
give some of those skills that you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit of the hard part, because a lot of the conversation in education is like, should exactly like how should we let students use it to do what they're doing now? That's not really the fundamental question of whether they're getting a job, so to speak. Did they use it to do what they would otherwise do? That's not the issue. The issue is more like how to redesign the educational experience to make it so that they have this experience like you were talking about earlier to kind of be relevant in this new world. And I think that it can be done, but it's harder to do. People almost feel like, well, gee, I'm taking a risk if I redesign the way we're educating students, but you're obviously taking a huge risk if you don't. I think you're probably taking a bigger risk. Obviously, that's my opinion, but I do think once, universities kind of make some more changes, then because you have some schools that are basically feeder. I mean, there's different types of schools and environments, and you have some places where most kids go to college or all kids, or you have some places where a few. It's like the schools that are kind of the feeders to the universities, they want to keep being the feeders. That's kind of their brand. So they got to figure out how to do that. But I think the canary in the coal mine, if all the listeners don't know what the canary in the coal mine is, the coal miners would send the canary into the coal mine. And then if the canary didn't come back, they'd probably be like, hey, there's not enough oxygen in the coal mine. We shouldn't go in. So it basically is kind of a warning sign. So, and I think some of these things, people say, oh, they just put that title in there because you got to get people's attention. It's like, well, hey, yes, you have to get people's attention these days, right? Like that's the reality of it, right? There's competition for attention, but I also think it's true to the title. Here, maybe it's not that the canary is not coming back at all, but the canary is coming back kind of winded, maybe aged a little bit, right? It's not as strong as it kind of otherwise used to be. So I think it's good to get this out there and see this as a wake up call, and still even to reverse things. I mean, I saw a classroom where they're teaching AI, and there's a sign on the wall too that says everyone needs to learn to code. So it's like, well, we probably got to take that sign down. But things are changing. I mean, it's okay. I mean, it's not going to be easy all the time, but it's going to be really hard if you don't try to adapt to the changes and plan for the changes.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to share they do have an upcoming seminar on September 29th. I'm going to go through the findings. And so they're probably going to have Q&A and whatnot. So definitely just wanted to kind of share that here, and we'll put the link for you in the show notes.
So today I just wanted to talk briefly about Notebook LM. You can use it anybody can use it, notebooklm.google.com, even with your personal email account. Basically what you can do is you can take a bunch of documents or even a single article and upload that. And they have two AI podcasters that sound like people come on and they'll discuss the article or the readings that you upload. And if you have written something yourself recently or a while ago, upload that document because that will really give you an idea of how accurately they discuss the document in terms of kind of the accuracy of the content, the major themes they hit on. If it's kind of like somewhat controversial, they'll bring out that controversy and they'll have a discussion about it. They'll also, within the Notebook LM, it's meant for education. So you can generate a quiz if you want to quiz yourself about the contents. You can generate an outline. There's a mind map where you can kind of see the ideas flow across. There's even a button that says join where you can click and ask questions of the podcasters. That's probably works about 80%, but it's kind of cool. It's just there's a bit of delay in them giving you an answer. The reason I bring this up is because recently a college student asked me, they just said, oh, can like I use AI to summarize my readings for class? And I'm like, oh my God, like, come on, right? He's like, it's over 100 pages. He's like, I don't have time to read all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, you can just take it, just put it where the paperclip is uploaded. I was like, I gave him some ideas for prompts for the summaries, but he had a little trouble. So he sent them to me. The reason was these things were like over 100 megabytes, and you can only upload a document up to 100 megabytes into the system. So I had him like share it with me on a Google Drive. I shrunk the documents in my own Adobe down to about 5 megabytes, and then I uploaded them into gemini.google.com, and then I just asked it to strip the text out and create all the text. So it just stripped all the text out. So now he had a little more usable copy. And I shared that with him. And then he put those into Notebook LM and generated, we had a podcast. And he was like, oh my God. He was like, this is great. It generates key terms. So it's like, he had sent me a couple screenshots. It's generally, what's the Chinese Exclusion Act? What's social Darwinism? It gave him the whole outline. You can even you can chat with it too and ask questions. So I was thinking back to like when I was in grad school and we had this one class, and I actually liked all my grad school professors, so nothing against them, but they would just give us like hundreds of pages of readings. And then people would show up in this quote unquote seminar and the professor would be ready to talk about the readings. And it was kind of obvious that like no one had done any of the reading. Like we probably should have kind of figured out like, well, each of us read an article and then we could add a conversation, but we didn't coordinate. So I was like, well, I was thinking a lot of people compare, they're like, well, what if the students read all that? It'd be more valuable than if they used Notebook LM. Well, we can debate that generally. I'll make some points on that. But when the students kind of just generally don't read the stuff at all, or maybe read like 10% of it, it's definitely better right, to use Notebook LM. And then I'm thinking he probably learned more of the content, right? Like he listened to the podcast. He has these key terms he hadn't heard of before. He has the outline. He's like chatting with it. And then he was like, yeah, I can even quiz myself. That's way more than I would have done, right? As a student with the same, I just wouldn't have done most of the reading. And I just would have showed up in class and I wouldn't have done anything. The other thing, he's a recent college student. A high school sometimes would criticize teachers, oh, they're not interactive or something. High school is way more interactive than college, or at least like this. Like, I think he was just shocked because it's in his major. He's like a history major, right? So he's like, he shows up, he's all excited for his major, and the president was like, here, go read all this stuff and come back to me, and then we'll talk about it. I came up with an acronym called GRABS. Go read all this BS and come back to me. If you want, you can put it in the podcast. I have this, and then some professors are willing to die on this hill. We're going to give the students all these readings. We're going to pretend they read it. We're going to yell at them in class, you're not reading it. We're going to give everyone a B plus, and then we're going to go home. That's basically like a lot of higher ed right now, right? So to me, it's like, it just seems in the Notebook LM thing, it's kind of a better way to learn. Even if, regardless of, okay, well, learn all this content. I mean, it's just like if you're a history major, I guess you need to learn this history, right? It makes sense. If you just take that for a given, okay, we need to learn all that history. What's a better way to learn it, right? Is it really, people talk about, oh, there's not enough research on like using AI in the classroom. It's like, here's a whole bunch of learning science. It's like not consistent with it. It's what learning science or like best practices research says, go give kids like 100 pages of PDFs that are so old, the scan is like 100 megabytes. Like you don't even scan stuff like that anymore. And then pretend they read it all and then randomly talk about it for what, either 50 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes or 2 hours and 45 minutes, depending on your class, and then write an essay about it and pretend everyone learned it. Like a gigantic mirage I'm just saying, it's something to feel like, well, okay, well, yeah, but what else are we going to do? They're willing to like die on this hill, right? They're willing to say that's better than other ways of learning. And I think that's questionable, but I'll say that most people who use Notebook LM find it very, very useful. I think Google might just be creating an AI teacher, which may discourage some people from using it. It's pretty powerful. Like I had a younger student, I showed some middle school students how to use it in the summer. She's like, oh, this is great. She's like, I'll download the podcast. And when I'll go for a run, when I have a text the next day, I'll listen to the podcasters. She's like, and I'll listen to it on the bus the way to school. And I'm like, all right, like she's going to kill it. So we're kind of also like worried about kids kind of cheating. Kids are figuring out how to use this technology to like not just get a leg up, but get like 5 legs up, like over their peers who are pretending they're at home reading all these articles and not really learning the material. So I just kind of wanted to talk about, so it's kind of like, well, this tool, I kind of, I think that most people have pretty positive experience with this, but also just kind of, we got to think about how else people are learning. And what's really weird, what's the best available ways we have to learn? And I think this is probably, at least compared to that, this is one of the better ones.
No, definitely. And it was actually one of the first ones I introduced when I was teaching this summer. And one of the things, like, I also think, yes, they know how to use these tools, and yes, these tools are there.
Yeah.
And how do you use this for learning? What are the different ideas, and how are you kind of like creating opportunities for them to share with each other what could be so that you can
Right, right.
by the gaps. We did something where like sometimes they don't even know how to like label notebooks, right? Like, okay, how could you create one for every class? Let's label the notebook for every class. How are you going to think about organization of ideas? Because there could be a point, it's kind of like a filing cabinet. If you just keep piling a bunch of stuff in there,
Right, right, right.
messy, it's not organized. And even while Notebook LM, you can put up to like, what is it, like 500 sources, I think, if you have the more advanced version. Even let's just go with 50 sources that you can put in, right?
Right,
If you don't know how to check and uncheck the right articles, it
right, right.
can get to a point where like you could go in and ask a question, but it's going to now pull from so many different things. So there's so much strategy, I think, that goes
Right, right.
into the organization and the design of the notebook, that to me, this is all the coaching, the mentoring, all the pieces that like, hey, we're trying to figure out in this moment ourselves. And I think the more opportunity you create for either your teachers to come together and do this, your admin to come, just people in general to come together and do this, the easier it's going to be for people as they kind of adopt. But we should have said this in the beginning. I just realized we're recording this on Labor Day, which is like very ironic, right? Given like, again, like this idea that your work changes, what people advocate for. Like, it's crazy to think that like people were working insane number of hours per day, 7 days a week, that now we have this like 40-hour work week, which back then was like this like quote unquote innovation. And now I think is this moment where I don't know, it's just funny to be, not funny, but like it's ironic to just be recording this particular episode on Labor Day, because I think we're going to see like a new kind of like Labor Day emerge for people. But I do want to share our next article, because I think this one actually really defined out a lot of the things it is that we're talking about right now. So this one was an article a couple weeks ago with the Washington Post. It said bosses are seeking AI literate job candidates, but what does that mean? And I think that is like the conversation that like if you're listening to this episode and you're going back, yeah, what does it mean to be AI literate at first grade, second grade, third grade, fifth grade, 12th grade, 10th, all the different age levels? Because being AI literate, I think, doesn't necessarily mean I need to be using ChatGPT. I absolutely think there's a time and a place for, where you introduce these tools, but I do think a lot of younger kids can get isolated if that's the only way you see it. And so, anyways, I thought this was, hey, this article is so good. Okay. They're like, as a former project manager, this person at Taylor thought she'd be a strong candidate for a job as a senior business analyst at Disney. So, again, it's not even just like, oh, I'm a new graduate. Like, no, this is somebody in their 30s. And she said among the job requirements was this understanding of AI, its capabilities and limitations. And so she was like, oh, but didn't it just come out? How can people have this experience? And I think I hear this, a lot of people talk about this as well in like the consulting space and other spaces. Like, it's so new, nobody knows anything yet. And I personally really disagree with that statement. I think, yes, I agree. Obviously, like any technology, everything, there's always going to be new things, but there are definitely durable skills, design thinking practices, design thinking methodologies, and probably many other ones for other people that do have very strong historical context for how we navigate new technologies. And so I think that to me is the point that this article makes so well. So, anyways, they basically talk about how this like AI skills is now creeping into job descriptions, even for non-technical roles. So this isn't even just like, oh, I've graduated or majored in AI. And they said that the different definitions really vary. And there's obviously not this like kind of standard. But there's this one place in here where they quote Zapier, which we've talked about a little bit, that they said over here, for us, being capable is the bar. You have to at least have that to get hired. So knowing how to use ChatGPT or just knowing how to like, I can use this for a marketing campaign or something, like that is like not really what they're looking for. And they did a really good idea. They came over here and they kind of made a chart. And we know Zapier has been very much at the forefront of this, but he's like, to clarify, he made a chart, which he posted, detailing skill sets and abilities for roles, including engineering, support, and marketing, that would categorize a person as AI capable, adoptive, or transformative. And I think, again, this is the kind of work that has to be done. He said a marketing employee who uses AI to draft social posts and edit by hand would be capable, that someone who builds an AI chatbot that can create brand campaigns for a targeted group of customers would be considered transformative. So to me, these are the different competencies, and I think Zapier has really like led the charge in this. But I thought this was just like a really interesting article in that way. And they kind of say something that we've been saying a lot on here. AI will soon be a team member working alongside most employees. So like familiarity these days, like, I don't think people realize like how much time it's been since we've had this technology. Like three
It's been a while.
it's a long time to have something like this. So now to walk in, and this is why I caution people on the narrative of, hey, we just have to meet people where they are. Oh no, they're really afraid, so we have to go slow. And it's like you can do that if you feel like you can really ramp up once you get over that hurdle. Because if you don't have a plan for how you're going to significantly ramp up, I feel like I always say, like, AI just feels like such an unforgiving technology. Like the iPads, if you adopted it in 2012 or 2020, I don't really know that there was that much of a difference, to be honest. But if you put a 10-year time frame on when a person chooses to adopt AI and you were to wait 10 years, let's say you would even wait like 3 years, like the case of this article we just read, I feel like it's not going to.
Well, I think because it's part of it's in your workflow. Like part like in just kind of you want to like first realize it's going in your workflow. Like when I first started, and I still do sometimes, I'm like, oh, I should have used like an AI for that, right? So part of it is kind of getting in the workflow. Then part of it is, well, how do I want to be in the workflow? What tools? The tools will change, but not really the types. Like the functionalities are going to kind of not kind of change. I think this person like that you quoted, they want someone else to like do it for them. They like expect like, well, when I go to work, someone will train me, and then when I maybe apply for the next job, I'll say like, I used it in my job. I mean, you can obviously start playing around with it yourself. You can take an online class. You can follow people who like have, I mean, everybody, even some of the people I disagree with the most, they've given me at least one good idea about something to use it for, right? Like there's all kind of ways to educate yourself. It's like, yes, there aren't a lot of people who maybe have like used it at work or they had a class on it at college. I'm sure that number is really large. The people who haven't used it at work have a class on college. But did you say, well, because of that, nobody does? It's like, no, like the people who are like the go-getters realize it's important, trying to figure it out. And obviously AI is going to change. but it's going to be easier for you to use it in the future and kind of understand it and kind of see what's happening and see the relevance of it. Even if you use something, there was an article recently in MIT Technology Review that said we're basically at the toddler stage of AI. That's like what I think people don't realize, right? And I do think, obviously, he says a lot, so it's not surprising. Ethan Mugg. I don't agree with everything he says. I mean, he knows a lot about AI and other things that I don't. So, but I'll just say, like, and people say, well, I don't agree, but like he posts like a lot of different things he uses it for. It's like, okay, well, try that one. Like, it's not, this isn't, you got to take like some initiative. You got to have some drive. Like, I can't, and the other thing too, I do see some of the like job descriptions, they'll say, oh, we're maybe in like, we'll ask you to like tell us the way you used AI, like in your own life. Right, and it just be some personal thing, but, "Oh, I used it to, like, bake a cake." They just wanted to know that I mean, they're also, like, to kinda support that thing a little bit. They're also not expecting you to have, like, built an army of bots that, like, fly drones onto autonomously, right? They're just expecting you to, like, have used it, tried it, and thought about how you could use it in your life because it's intelligence and it applies everywhere. But, yeah, I tell you what, that comment, I wouldn't hire that person right away. I'd just be like, "No." And it's not because they don't know about AI, it's because like, the attitude of someone else needs to, like, tell me how to do this. But anyhow, that sounds like I probably should end on something positive. We're getting close to the end, but positive side is it takes, like, initiative.
Yeah. If you remember back in January when we actually first did one of our episodes, there was an article that came out by the CEO of LinkedIn where he was like, in 2025, everyone should be able to answer the question, tell me a story at work or at home about
Oh, that's probably what I was thinking of indirectly when I said it, yeah.
yeah, and that was and again, why did he say story? Exactly to your point, how do you take initiative? How are you curious? Yes, the technology is new, but durable skills are not new. I think durable skills now are just baseline skills, like just your baseline reading, writing, math, like durable skills have to come into that category now as well. And which brings us to sort of like our last update that we'll share. This was a pretty significant one. The Google Gemini integrated an upgrade to their image editing model. Although what was interesting was, and I didn't get to read this properly, but today I was reading about how like this actually wasn't new and how like they say new things. Like first they test things in the app
Yeah.
to do with the leaderboard and how they announce these new things even though they've kind of been around for a while, like or integrated in a little bit for a while. But
You
anyways,
just don't realize it, or maybe everybody doesn't see it or, like, whatever, right?
exactly. But
You're just like, "Oh, that was a really cool image I got," but you don't realize that was, like, yeah, the images that are coming out, and you can edit these.
yeah,
That's what's really amazing. It's because they say, I don't know it as well, it's not my field, but, people who do, like, image editing and use a lot of these, I guess probably like Photoshop. I think I read something like called the closest thing to a Photoshop replacement that basically exists. So, yeah, I mean, they had a website up before they announced it. There was like a little this thing called Nano Banana, and I checked it out, or Nano Banana. And I was like, wow. And then someone's like, oh, it's probably Google. But yeah, these things look really, 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 I don't know how many, I can't say really enough. I mean, that looks like a real person where somebody kind of like used Photoshop to enhance the background. That one there, I would think that's a real girl with
but it is
the,
new. These are people uploading photos of themselves.
and they're just changing all the context. Yeah.
In this particular one, it's a person uploading a photo of herself, reimagine as
Oh, all right.
that instead inside the setting, reimagine them as an artist, reimagine them as a 90s sitcom. So this is what has really made this, I think, even more this I think after Notebook LM, this is probably the one that I'm seeing so many people play with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They can go in, they can upload any photo of themselves or just any photo in general. Like she just uploaded a butterfly and said, turn it into a dress I can wear in New York. Like reimagine these rainbow, they inspired by this flower style. So, like, I mean, this is again, when we think about jobs and when we think about kind of that entry level of what people are doing, like, here's this room, show me bookshelves on it. Like, people are putting up rooms of their houses, like, which
No.
really you could always do. I mean, look at this. Like, it's really, really, really good. There's typography that it's doing as well. So, again, you just think about like jobs, what's going to be required now that AI can do this? How is it going to change your workflow? And I think for a new grad, I think that's a much harder question to answer than it is for somebody who has so many years of experience that can really has experience with the gaps and with the weaknesses of certain things and to be like, "Oh my god, wait a minute, can we now do this in as part of our workflow before we go to the client and show them actually what things are going to look like?" And that's not to say a new graduate couldn't do this at all, but I think how are we really training them to be more intentional?
Yeah.
that narrative right when they go into interviews, right when they're creating portfolios to actually be specific about, hey, here's what it would look like before, but here's what it could be now.
Oh, and I changed it for this because, you think like an entry level worker, they would learn to kind of then like think about what they're going to prepare the client. They'd probably sit there for 6 months and just like edit images. And then maybe they'd go with their boss to like see the client. But now like the boss can like edit the images in like 2 minutes to do exactly what they want and go visit the client. Right. So it's like maybe that's what kind of what I was saying earlier when PwC is saying, well, we want to hire people with higher level skills to start. Right? It's not gonna be enough to be the image editor. It's gonna be you're gonna have to know how to edit the image and, whatever technology exists. And then you're gonna have to be kind of prepared to be like, go to the client like right away. Not just sit there and edit images for 6 months, 9 months, and right? So I think those are the big things that we're changing. I think when you look at universities or kind of the CTE programs, they kind of need to show kids how to do this basic stuff and give them opportunities to learn. And once you do it, it's not really that hard. It's just, I used to try all the tools and now just like, oh my God, I can't try all these things. Right. But like once you that's kind of the easy part. Like the hard part is using the thinking, the design thinking, like whatever,
Yeah.
right? Like you're doing, right? That requires experience. That requires like practice. You can provide that experience or practice, right? Whether it's in simulations, whether it's in programs where the kids go out and like kind of work in like industry, right? Like experiential type learning approaches, design approaches. Those things all can be provided, but it's not going to come by from a kid sitting at a desk
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to pass a standardized test. It's just not. It's not. And then when they go to college, like say that standardized test gets them into college, they're still not going to have the relevant because it's like a muscle, right? It's like a mind muscle. It's like a way of working. It's like a way of knowing. It's like a way of experiencing. It's a way of relating to people. And even if you have all fives in your APs, if you can't work like that post graduation, those fives won't have got you anywhere.
Yeah, no, that's so true. So we will add in, so remember we said like we'll start now adding in a prompt. And I think like, yes, this is hard and it takes a lot of work and whatnot, but to me, this is where AI tools play such a significant role. And you don't know how to figure this out. You don't know how to apply design thinking. You don't know what three other things could do that could enhance or make this a transformative workflow, but your AI tools can really support in that way. And so we'll drop a prompt in below. Again, if you're part of the AI Power Circle, we'll have a full video tutorial for you. And as always, if you have any questions or anything about either this episode or topics you would like us to cover, send us a message and we'll be happy to include those. All right, everyone, happy Labor Day. Although this will be a little bit late.
We worked extra hard today. We had a little longer podcast on Labor Day.
I'm sorry. All right, bye, everyone.
Okay, bye.
It's your turn to join the conversation by sharing what you enjoyed or what questions you have. In a world where time and attention are so valuable, thank you for choosing to listen and for being a part of our Designing Schools community. Leaving a review for the podcast helps others learn about the show, giving them the gift of knowledge and allowing this community to help create access and exposure to ideas and opportunities others may not even know exist.